Hi, ELD here with Brainstorm MTG with some more Wednesday Night Legacy. This was filmed live at Scholars at our weekly Legacy tournaments. Those are at 7:30 in Brockton, Massachusetts, if we're ever in the area on a Wednesday night. And we've got Death and Taxes versus Ken, who I knew would be on blue. I was guessing Miracles, he plays that a lot, but it's actually going to be more of a Grixis Delver variant. Either way, that Aether Vial, a strong opening. It's going to shut off a lot of the counter magic, reducing the target's basically the swords to Plowshares and other targets if I manage my counters well.
Yeah, and I was reading an article by somebody.
And we've got a turn 2, a Fearless Thalia right there. So possible to have waited to Vial at 2, but going to go ahead and jam that right out there. That is a very aggressive line. Thalia can be so very good versus all of the cantrips in the format. Any Brainstorms, Ponders, Gitaxian Probes, Preordains, any of those cards that are really meant to kind of fill in the gaps in your mana curve are so much worse when they go to 2 mana. Aside, of course, for the mana inefficiency, you're also looking at the fact that those cards are really made, or one of the benefits of those cards, I should say, is really making sure that you're using your mana effectively. And at 1 mana, you can slot them in any time that you have open mana. Whereas 2 mana, a lot of the time you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and you can't really make things flow smoothly. You're basically start choosing in between playing cantrips and playing spells that you're digging for, and it really diminishes the quality of that card on a way that's not entirely summed up by the fact that it costs twice as much mana. So there we go, Thalia bringing the beats, developing a nice mana base on the Death and Taxes side here. A Wasteland is going to be able to slow down Ken as he tries to develop. And again,
Crusader,
without using Vial, it's just going to be a Mirran Crusader hard cast. Taking a very aggressive line here. Of course, Ken could sacrifice a fetch land to turn Force of Will online. But he would not be able to Brainstorm in response and Force of Will, so he needs to have it in hand. And getting a couple of non-basics. That does signal it's very possible Ken doesn't have any basic lands in his list, seeing as how he grabbed non-basics in the face of Wasteland. And we're looking at a Lightning Bolt on Thalia. So she is out of there. Mirran Crusader is going to resolve. And Vial is just going to bring in another Thalia right there.
There she is. Okay.
She's there.
That does shed a little bit of light on the just casting Thalia there. It is definitely something you're happy to trade a Force of Will for when you've got an extra Thalia, especially if you know the second one is going to resolve. Because you have the Aether Vial. So that is something to be wary of when you're a blue player versus Death and Taxes. Really getting maximum value out of those excess copies of Thalia can be very important for the Death and Taxes player. You really don't want to end a game where you've got 3 values in your hand. If you could find ways to trade those for counter magic along the way, you're generally very happy. And True Name Nemesis coming down. That is going to be, at this point, a very solid defensive card for Ken. It's going to be tough to get on the offense, given that he's down on life, and I threaten a very serious clock here.
Pro green and black, right?
Yes. Of course, I have been hearing a lot of people using the True Name Nemesis moniker around Mirran Crusader, calling it a white True Name, and other variants on that. It is very close to that in certain matchups. Of course, in this match here, we've got Lightning Bolt, which can absolutely kill him dead. But aside from that, a lot of the grindier blue decks are starting to play cards like Abrupt Decay and Kolaghan Command as their kind of premium removal slots, skewing away from the efficiency of Lightning Bolt for the more card advantage heavy versions of removal in the format. And, you know, Kolaghan's Command, I mean, just does so much work when it resolves, but against Mirran Crusader, it does have that black mana symbol, so it is not going to really ruin his day. And we've got a 2-mana
Sure. Main phase Brainstorm.
Brainstorm. So yeah, it is so much worse. I mean, there's a reason Impulse does not see a ton of play, and that really is because it doesn't slot in around those other spells. I mean, the effective Impulse is absolutely fine, but it really just makes it so awkward when you have to choose in between your card drawing or your threats. And in here we actually have Delver's Efficiency, so that is actually a really solid turn of events for Ken to be able to set up that Delver flip.
Stoneforge.
And we've got a Stoneforge Mystic off of Vial. This could threaten to just blow the game wide open right here. Sword of Fire and Ice giving Pro Blue would be devastating, especially once that 4th mana comes down, to be able to put in the Sword of Fire and Ice and equip it in the same turn. This is going to be a little bit slower. So Ken establishing a board. Definitely not just rolling over here, but there are some very powerful plays threatened from Death and Taxes here. And another Thalia. Being able to ensure that Thalia stays on the board is going to make it so Ken's deck is so much worse here. Delver, of course, flipping, set up by Brainstorm.
Costs 2 to equip, right?
It does cost.
Ken, a
you.
very
Yep.
cautious
Free to
player.
cast, 2 to
When
equip.
he was on Miracles, very often would go to time, something that he has worked on. He definitely has improved his game, but he's a very cautious and thoughtful player, and that can be a bit of a problem for him in terms of his tournament management. That is something that a lot of people, I don't hear a lot of people talking about. The difference in between winning a game of Magic, winning a match of Magic, winning a tournament, those are all very different things. And you could be the best kitchen table Magic player on the planet, but when you go to a tournament, you might find yourself really not having success just because of the difference with playing with a clock and knowing when to walk away from certain games, you know, what matches you should be conceding a game in game 1 when you fall very far behind because you need the time to win game 2 and 3. And it's really not about just maximizing the number of games that you win, which I don't think is a entirely obvious thing to a lot of people when they start playing Magic. I mean, it was much more so the case in Vintage back in the day, where you would be in a situation, because of the nature of the format, where you could possibly win. You might have 1 or 2 outs that would not only stabilize, but could possibly win you the game. And there were still times where it was absolutely correct to just scoop it up and move on, because digging for those outs might take another 10-15 minutes and leave you unable to actually win the match if you fail to hit your out. So sometimes it's more I guess, a higher probability of you winning the match if you actually gave yourself the chance to play all 3 games. So Delver goes on the offensive there for Ken. Gurmag Angler comes down. Of course, he is black, so true name, not true name, the Mirran Crusader is really not going to care about him. And it looks like we've got Sword of Fire and Ice joining the team here.
Stoneforge.
Yep.
And another Stoneforge Mystic to get the Batterskull. So this is quite a bad situation for Ken here. We've got essentially a True Name Nemesis on the Death and Taxes side, which is going to be hitting for 2 for regular damage, 2 for first strike, because it has double strike, and then 2 more for the...
Sword of Fire.
Oh, here we go. So that is actually a sloppy way to phrase that. Let's go ahead and just call it 12 per turn.
Okay, so
And
4 first
2 of
strike
that can be
goes through.
distributed among the creatures as well. So it looks like that Delver is not going to be long
I'll
for the
shoot
squirrels.
the insect.
Of course, Delver scent
draw a card.
packing.
Yep.
Extra card draws
then
all over the place.
4 more
Very,
goes
very grim situation.
And do 2 to you. And
So we've got a
draw
very
my
fast
card.
clock here. We've got card advantage coming in.
Land for turn. And ship it back to you.
and no real cards that are going to get rid of Mirran Crusader on Ken's side. The best he could hope for there would be some type of removal on the Sword of Fire and Ice, and then blocking with his True Name Nemesis. But he did not have that exact set of cards in his hand, so he has to move on to games 2 and possibly 3 here. Of course, Death and Taxes really built in a way to try and do quite well versus the cantrip blue variants, decks like Check Pile, really the type of matchups that you're hoping for with Death and Taxes. You certainly don't want anything that's too broken when you're playing Death and Taxes. I think the way this deck evolved is kind of unusual in that it kind of stemmed from almost like a deck building challenge when you look at it. You know, the Time Spiral block introducing Mangara, Serra Avenger, and some of those other tools for White Weenie, which had been a deck since the original alpha printing of Magic the Gathering. White Weenie's always been a type of strategy that has been around. You know, the ability to play an aggressive base and then have some bombs. Previously, that's been cards like Armageddon. Cataclysm in recent years has also put up a lot of powerful results. All right, so taking a look at the sideboarding here, it looks like Phyrexian Revoker on the Death and Taxes side is going to be coming out. That's going to make room for Holy Light. That was a card that I was really interested to try out as a kind of unexpected slot in Death and Taxes. The ability to get rid of empty tokens, Young Pyromancer, and all of the elemental friends. And of course, True Name Nemesis. There's a lot of cards that Holy Light will take down, but Revoker is one of them, so we're going to go ahead and take those out. And there's really not much in the way of things to target there. Now at this point, I may or may not have really surmised that this is a full-blown Grixis list. My original read was Blue-Red Delver, but Gurmag Angler did give that extra information as well as that Underground Sea. But of course, we didn't see any type of discard to make it completely obvious. And Ken finishing up sideboarding, we can see that those Force of Wills coming out, very standard play, and that does make it more attractive for Death and Taxes to go ahead and jam some very powerful bombs. Cards like Armageddon or Cataclysm, cards like the Gideon, to be able to pump your entire team, or to just really outgrind somebody by constantly making a stream of 2/2s, or just go on the offensive if you completely run out of other threats. So there's a lot of very powerful effects that Death and Taxes can bring in, and be fairly confident a lot of them are going to resolve against the blue deck that is boarded out with Force of Wills.
Fistful of Ponders and
of course, the other side of that is when you're looking at the very bomb-heavy plan, you have to remember Thalia is probably going to be part of your plan. It's probably going to be on board if you're doing well, and if that's the case, just keep in mind, you know, your Armageddons, while it is printed at 4 mana, just kind of keep it in mind that you're bringing in 5 mana cards when you're kind of assessing the curve of your hand and of the deck itself. And it looks like some lands, perhaps an Aether Vial, some creatures. That should be good to go for Death and Taxes. And Ken has Probe, perhaps a Daze, and one of those Delver proxy cards. So that is where any type of Delver variant really wants to be, is on turn 1 Delver. And we've got the Council's Judgment. Jitte,
I can leave it up.
very, very powerful card in this type of matchup. Of course, True Name Nemesis really doesn't care about it, but every other creature in the deck is going to be very concerned, either making blocking the holder of that equipment a very bad idea, or actually just eating up the smaller creatures like Delvers and Pyromancers. And then we have a turn 1 Aether Vial. And then we've got the Daze. Feels much, much better to be dazing that than Force of Willing it. And we do not have a flip Delver, so we're just going to have some Wizard Beats here coming in for 1.
Bink. Slow burn. It's not slow in this deck. You tap all your toppers.
Ken going to add to the pressure with a Ponder, making sure that Delver will flip. We've We've got, looks like a 4 bullets, perhaps, and some other creatures. So this is actually looking like an excellent start for Ken in terms of the general plan for him. Death and Taxes would be in much better shape with a Vial.
I want that.
Still going to be able to jam a turn 2 Thalia,
Let's play for it. Draw.
unless something better comes off the top of the deck. And Wasteland is going to be the land.
Yeah. What else am I taking?
What's it going to be?
I would keep this hand in the dark too. So.
The pace of this game means Serra Avenger may just get cast on one of those later turns. Generally, you want to be putting it in off of Aether Vial, but that is a totally reasonable play for 2 mana. Oh, and a Mother of Runes.
Mother of Runes.
Right. Mother of Runes ensuring that later creatures survive, and in this case, she is going to take one for the team. They're going to have a flipped Delver, and assuming Ken has the red mana, we will have, there we go, a Bolted Mom going to the bin, taking one to keep Thalia alive, and Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite's green ability, very, very relevant here, so it's interesting that Ken has that tropical island. Of course, you do not need green in order to play Deathrite. You can just play it as a black card and just use it for the aggressive side of the card. And, of course, the mana. But that green, not hugely relevant in a lot of matchups, but in the Death and Taxes matchup, extremely relevant. And we've got a Mirran Crusader here. Of course, no Sword of Fire and Ice on it yet, so it is susceptible to those burn spells. And we'll see what Ken can come up with here.
Oh, yeah.
And thinking about it, we've got blue for Ponder. Digging for a Lightning Bolt. That would be perhaps the best card here. Of course, Ponder, one of those skill testing cards, not as much of a skill tester as Brainstorm, but it is important to not get the blinders on and just keep a great card that is surrounded by pure garbage, depending on the game state. Sometimes that great card is good enough.
12.
Other times you need to make sure that you've got that fetch land to just draw what you want off the Ponder and get those random draws for the following draw steps. And here we've got Mirran Crusader and a decision. Ideally, getting that Jitte on Crusader is going to be the fastest path to victory. A lot of options here. Of course, the Council's Judgment is in the deck for True Name Nemesis. Could be a totally reasonable line to go ahead and try and get rid of that Deathrite Shaman. The Delver of Secrets, or Insectile Aberration as it's currently looking. And what do we have here? We are going to see the Jitte keeping Wasteland open. At this point, very difficult to really keep Ken off of whatever type of mana he wants. Deathrite Shaman definitely going to be able to provide the colored mana he wants. We're going to have plenty of lands in the graveyard between the fetch land and the wasteland, so...
Okay, 40.
We've got that adjustment down. Ken at 14. Able to keep some pressure here.
Thanks for looking, Grim. Resolve.
Just past 30 minutes left in the round.
Say you're very good.
And we've got Deathrite applying some extra pressure.
Done.
Very often when these Grixis builds do run Tropical Island, they'll run just a singleton, so Wasteland could actually effectively shut off Deathrite Shaman from gaining life, but not shut the deck off from having mana. So Deathrite, of course, being able to produce any type of mana. Just one of the best cards in the format. Really is kind of shocking how much work that little elf does, especially when people who haven't played the format may think of it as a format full of decks that can just win on the first turn and show and tell Emrakuls and Bristlebrands, and you've got this little one casting cost elf that just does so much work. Alright, let's see here. Ken really thinking this through, and it looks like he has a Cabal Therapy and a young Pyromancer, so he kept that green mana open, interestingly enough.
Draw.
I feel like I just bring in Inquisitions, Chalices, and I could sideboard, but Nick.
Alright, so lots of decisions here. So some of the factors to think about here, we've got Deathrite Shaman and the Delver, which could combine rather quickly to put away
It's not like I can't cast it.
the game, and then we've got a Jitte on the Mirran Crusader. So if this connects, we're looking at 4 counters, and that will absolutely threaten to just blow this game wide open. So we've got to think Ken must have some type of removal, perhaps for the equipment, perhaps for the creature. If it's the creature, it'll be game over, but getting rid of that equipment would be massive. And then we have an Abrade. What a subtle printing that has made such an impact in this format. It really is amazing how the modal card just gives so many little different options.
It's like really bad.
So here, unable to actually kill the Crusader.
We'll take care of the Jitte.
Okay. Or unwilling to, I should say. He's going to kill the Jitte, preventing future shenanigans.
Okay.
So he's more concerned with the
Post
Jitte.
combat. Serra Avenger.
And then we've got the Serra Avenger. Alright, so we've got a game. Very tense situation. Deathrite Shaman does have essentially the evasion to push through here. There are plenty of instants and sorceries in Ken's graveyard. And I have not a lot of options left.
Very bad.
Brainstorm, filling in the gaps here in the mana curve, really giving him some options. None of those look particularly exciting. That fetch land, probably the most exciting card of the bunch, assembling what might be the best combo in Legacy, Brainstorm and fetch land. Getting rid of those 2 cards, Wasteland being one of them. Ken's not really looking to hinder my mana development at this point. And we've got a Cabal Therapy. Brutal, seeing as how he knows he will definitely hit on at least 1 card here, and that gives the flashback certainty as well. That perfect information, of course. The only problem with Cabal Therapy is not having perfect information. Gitaxian Probe
Too fair.
shores that up very nicely.
Defeat the card Hypergenesis.
This game looks very grim here. Ken thinking through whether or not he wants to offer the trade, and at this point he's probably largely fine with that.
Right? Just hoping Deathrite gets me there.
Good.
Draw.
And declines the trade.
And you can play Chrome Labs.
Thalia coming down,
Absolutely play Mental Misstep. If you don't play Mental Misstep, you're
and with Vigilance,
That was a 12.
no real reason not to swing.
Mental Misstep in Death Shadow?
Oh no.
Let's see what Ken's response is here. He's just going to go ahead and take it. Mirran Crusader stayed home, and then there's another Serra Avenger. So interesting game state now.
Play 12 mental
Really looks like Deathrite Shaman's going to get called on to do some double duty here. Ken low on cards, so Pyromancer perhaps not going to be able to just generate a massive amount of tokens as it would like to.
Council triple.
These type of situations, a card like Swords of Plowshares can wreak havoc. Be able to get just so close to the finish line, taking a conservative route, and then just have that those legs swept out from underneath you right before the end. So removal could be very, very important here.
I'll go to 19.
All right, Ken thinking through, looking at his graveyard, perhaps a Snapcaster, perhaps a Delve card. Ken trying to math something out here. And it is the Gurmag Angler. So he's going to keep a couple of extra, so he's putting 2 extra mana into that. Fork Bolt coming out. Fork Bolt gonna stay. Alright. Fork Bolt is a juicy target for Snapcaster, especially if this gets a little bit closer. Gurmag not really threatening to do very much here, seeing as how Mirran Crusader does have Pro Black. Very tense game here.
Waste.
And forcing the Deathrite activation. Going down to 3. And also tapping Ken out. So the shields are down if I've got anything very powerful here. A card like Armageddon would be very powerful, but again, my own Thalia pushes it out of range. Even if I did draw and have 4 mana, I need to get all the way to 5. And it looks like Serra Avengers are going to get in there.
Gets jumped.
Sending the whole team could also be an option, but it's not really. Like, Thalia is going to just get eaten by Gurmag Angler, so it's likely that it's just going to come in through the air.
Thalia.
I think you're a liar. I think you're lying at all. I just stopped trolling him. I'm getting a rise out of him.
Keeping all the blockers back. So it's a very bad situation here. Unless there's more creatures to add, this will not work.
Can't take any damage.
One possible line here would be to attack with everything and hope that Thalia could actually kill something.
So you just block 2.
Bounce it and then replay it. Crusader really wants to block that Gurmag Angler, however. Alright, so those are the attacks.
1, 2, 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3 blockers. 1,
Let's
2,
see here.
4 creatures.
Ken really
Play 1 creature
anguishing over this
and
decision.
I am lethal next turn.
Sacrificing for the team. He's got a token and a Delver down. And actually pretty reasonable situation.
Go ahead.
Let's see what comes in here.
And you took 3, right?
Oh, my bad. Yes, I'm at 6. Yeah, take that down.
Paying 2 mana to probe, that is gross. So essentially Ken has 2 more turns to kill me just with Deathrite Shaman.
Holy crap.
Stoneforge mixtape. Search for a mixtape.
And we have a lightning bolt there. Alright. So that is a slightly anticlimactic end there, but 3 damage is all it takes. That is what the card's designed to do. Looks like we had Deathrite Shaman removing for red mana and then casting that lightning bolt. A little fast there, picking up. And going into game 3. 20 minutes left on the clock. Plenty of time. Ken assessing his sideboard. Occasionally decks will take a look at days, whether they're on the play or the draw, and evaluate that card differently. Of course, much better when you're on the play and you can have those islands come down in order to actually turn days on for those early plays, and then also be ahead tempo-wise with your land drops, so that is a consideration.
You want to make sure your opponent picks their
And
cards up
perhaps
first.
some number of Force of Wills going
Gideon.
back in. Let's
Oh,
see
did I
what
pick it
he's-
up? I'm
Let's see what he's doing here.
out. We didn't go to damage.
No, you just. I thought you were removing for Deathrite Shaman to do
And we do.
do
We see
damage
some
to me.
forces going back in.
And I went to do the thing and you started picking your cards up. I didn't even verify that you had 2
Ken,
mana.
much more
cast,
comfortable.
yeah.
Holding Force of Wills, as
I
we
think
said
you
before,
did.
he
I'm
is
just
a
saying, like,
player
Make
with
sure.
a lot of
make sure
time,
they pick their cards up.
miracles.
It's very easy.
Force of Will,
It's like, oh yeah, it just has Karakas.
at least able to counter those early vials
Yeah, I mean, yes.
and
take the
early Mother
damage.
Runes. You don't have the removal for them.
That's my bad. I acted a little too
Does feel awfully bad getting 2 for 1 in such a grindy matchup, however. And while we're shuffling up here, I'd like to go ahead and thank Scholars Games in Brockton, Massachusetts. It's 244 Liberty Street, the new location, and we are actually going to be holding a Legacy tournament on February 10th. That is this upcoming weekend if you're watching this close to when it's been uploaded, and that'll be a lot of fun. Always is. The following weekend, we're going to have some vintage. So Scholars is committed to supporting the New England Eternal Magic community, and does so with monthly tournaments as well as the smaller weekly events. And here we go. Let's see if we can get some opening hands here. Brainstorm and a land. Usually good enough for me. We got a Diabolic Edict. That is a spicy card. Gets around Mother of Runes to a degree, though Death and Taxes does have a lot of creatures, so that may not find the exact creature you want to kill in every game state, but it is certainly a welcome card in your 60 when you're playing against Death and Taxes. Not a lot of throwaway creatures in there. They pretty much all do something, so it's generally going to at least net some type of positive effect. And of course, if they only have 1 creature on board, it's about as good a removal as it gets, albeit a little pricey. Alright, so 6 cards. We got Serra Avenger, some lands,
will
looks
keep
like maybe a Mother of
Scry.
Runes. That might have to do, and with the Scry, that's going to be a keep. See if that stays on the top or bottom. Always a little bit concerning when it stays on top to me. That tends to indicate that it is a much needed card, or that your opponent is very light on land and it happens to be the land. But if it's kept because it's a spell, it's generally a good one. And there we go into a turn 1 Deathrite. So definitely the type of opening that Ken wants. Either Delver or Deathrite on turn 1. And Mother of Runes. Going to turn this into a more defensive game. We've got a Rishadan Port. That can slow Ken's mana development.
During your upkeep, tap it.
Let's see if that's what it's going to be used for here. It looks like it's actually going to be used for a creature. Oh, and actually was used during the upkeep, so we have a during the upkeep tap Underground Sea, respond, use Deathrite to go ahead and edict that mom. So one of the only ways to get that mom off the board, and then Ken firing back with his own Wasteland. Kind of crazy how greedy the mana bases can be in decks that run Deathrite Shaman. Going down to 0 lands, and we'll see how that plays out. A Lightning Bolt, a strong card there, and then we've got that Tropical Island coming down into a Ponder. So, you know, it taps for blue. That's the most important thing here. The green is probably not very welcome here. I think Ken would probably be more happy if that was a basic island to be able to keep it around. Given the slugfest this is turning into surrounding the mana base. So Ancient Grudge going away. That card does a lot of work in this matchup, and a single Ancient Grudge can take down multiple pieces of equipment. It also takes out Aether Vial, Revoker when those are in the deck. So, no, and it came back to him. So there you go. He tried to shuffle it away, and the deck said, I think we know better than you do. Here you go. This may be useful later. And Deathrite declining to attack. That would indicate that he has most likely Brainstorm, and as we can see, he actually does. So it looks like he's planning on using that to Brainstorm during the end step. And another Wasteland, so just a real slugfest here, and decides not to use Deathrite in order to Brainstorm. So essentially just missing out on a point of damage there.
Exile, Wasteland.
And going after my graveyard to Brainstorm during his main phase. And assuring that he has the fetch land combo. So he's going to be able to get rid of something, or in this case, it looks like he drew Delver. So he will be able to flip Delver if he so chooses. Let's see what Ken decides to do here. Looks like his only blue source might be a fetch land, so we may be in a territory where Delver either flips on its own or just stays a wizard, all according to luck. So there we go, fetching into a Delver. So Ken's deck definitely performing a bit better underneath all of this wastelanding. His 1-mana threats are legitimate threats, whereas Death and Taxes cards are more supplemental at 1 mana with Mother of Runes and Aether Vial. But now we have a 2-mana Serra Avenger. So that essentially blanks that true name, I'm sorry, the Delver for now. We'll see. So he actually goes ahead and reveals the Delver. Interestingly enough, that is not necessary. And, oh, he's got a fetch land, which is nice. But he takes a little bit more of a cautious route. He's just going to poke the 1. And he's going to go ahead and play the other Delver of Secrets. So one thing that people sometimes miss is, so in the instance here where he has a fetch land, he will be able to trigger both Delvers and actually resolve the first trigger, and then if it does not flip, he can go ahead and fetch and have a chance on the second Delver. That is one of those kind of incremental plays that is often missed.
Draw.
Sometimes I'll actually do that with a Brainstorm, put back cards that I don't want, and then go ahead and make sure that the Delver flips, and then just shuffle them to get rid of them.
Flip it in.
Crusader.
Mirran Crusader. So swinging back, but if this flips here, this could be, and a Lightning Bolt. Oh, the perfect card to flip with. That's going to be able to kill the Mirran Crusader and put a massive amount of damage due to those flipped Delvers. That is a blowout card right there. You've got to go for it now. No real reason to keep it around. Oh, and he's going to decline to bolt now, perhaps hoping that I do something.
Attack step.
Perhaps like a Jitte and equip, trying to get that mana advantage, and he just doesn't main phase. And there's a second Mirran Crusader keeping Karakas up.
Ouch. 18.
All right. So Underground Sea, we're moving, going down to 11. We're going to have 6 more to go to 5. This game is looking like it's only got a couple of turns left, unless something dramatic happens. And red cards in Ken's hand may have just closed the door. Looks like we have a Cabal Therapy versus a very light hand.
That's Chalice of the Void.
One
Saving
card.
that mana for what might be an Abrade. Definitely saw an Ancient Grudge in there. And there's a Thalia. If you're going to respond, that likely makes it time to respond. Karakas is going to make Thalia very, very hard to kill in a long, grindy game. But that is not what this is looking like at all.
Attack step. Set.
Mirran Crusader. His life total is high enough that he is totally fine with that. 2 more damage. And saving any type of removal in his hand. Showing the Karakas. And that is the match right there. So Ken walks away with that last one. Well played. And that is the match. Well, thanks for watching. This is a new style of commentary for us here. So we're going to put up a few different types on YouTube this week. Let me know what you like. It's definitely a lot of work, but if you guys like it, we can definitely make this happen on a weekly basis to try and bring you some legacy action from Scholar's games. And I would love to grow this to follow me around to all of the tournaments that I play all over New England. It is a lot of fun to be able to go back and take a look and see where those lines go throughout the match. So thanks for watching, and I'd love any type of feedback in the comments below. Thanks.